Wow. So that was the last episode of Swamp Thing, huh? I mean, good episode, but it was like totally obvious the way it ended that when they started filming it and this whole season, they had planned to have more episodes left in this season because you could just tell like this series finale ended and there was so much other stuff going on earlier in the episode that it's like it seemed to be truncated, like all these plot threads, way too soon. Whereas if they had originally had the 3 or more episodes they thought they were going to have this season before AT&T and Warner Brothers decided to pull the plug, these things would have played out. For example, Jason Woodrue, right? You know, after the cops busted him and took him out of the house, he had eaten the Swamp Thing's like organs or whatever, part of it, and had started to change him. And that's the last you saw of him. But I'll bet you they planned before the end of the episode for him to turn into the Floronic Man from the comics and be like a superpowered adversary for Swamp Thing to fight as like the final boss of this season. They were totally setting that up. But then, you know, like Warner Brothers and AT&T nipped the production in the bud and were like, instead of 13 episodes in the first season, you're only going to get 10. So the writers had to like wrap it up before they could do that. And now the show is canceled, so we'll never see it in season 2. And just other things, right? Like the sheriff, Avery killed, or he thought he killed the sheriff, and he had her set it up so that her car would like sink in the swamp and she would die by drowning after he stabbed her. I don't think that was supposed to be the end of her this season. She was probably supposed to like miraculously be alive, or maybe the swamp would infect her, give her powers or whatever, and turn up later on. Same with like Matt, right? Matt, we see him in a coma. And I'm pretty sure Matt was supposed to awaken from, well, not in the hospital. I'm pretty sure he was supposed to awaken, or we were supposed to see more scenes of people talking to him, like in the final 3 episodes of the show before, you know, the season ends. Maria's in the mental institution. I'll bet she was going to try to find a way to get out or get some kind of supernatural powers, but we won't see that. The end of the show, basically now, is just her locked up in the mental institution, seeing visions of her daughter, or the ghost of her daughter. Dan drives off as the Blue Devil, and we were probably supposed to see more of him as the Blue Devil during this first season, but now it's like the end of the show is just like he leaves Murray and he's gone forever to go off and be the Blue Devil, but they totally planned on doing, I'll bet you they wanted to do more with him. Just a lot of stuff was like cut short abruptly because they were mandated by the studio. I thought that given the really like stringent constraints they had, they ended the show as best they could, the writers. But it did seem like there was a lot of stuff unfinished, but I don't blame them. I mean, they were working under impossible conditions, and the studio kind of, you know, took the wind out of their sails. So I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt if there are things in this episode that seem incomplete, because, you know, we all know what happened, right? So I think they deserve a free pass in that respect. But anyways, let's go with the episode. I'll go of the things I just talked about now. I'll start with Dan. I'm not going to talk about explore in depth everything I just mentioned, but you know, with Dan Cassidy as the Blue Devil, well, he was just Dan Cass in this episode driving out of Murray. I thought it was kind of reckless of him the way he did it, because if you saw, he was in the car, you know, driving down the highway to leave the town, and he wasn't sure that that barrier would allow him to pass through it, or maybe if the barrier had been gone or whatever. But he was just barreling through like really fast. Like, what if that barrier had been there? Like, would he have had a car crash? I mean, at that speed, you know, that supernatural barrier, I would think it would have been a bit more realistic and cautious of him, like, to drive up to the barrier, you know, pull over to the side of the freeway, get out, and see if he could walk through first to test it, right? And then if he could walk through without, you know, being hit by the barrier or like, you know, whatever it did to him last time, he would know he was home free and then drive through it. But in this episode, he was just barreling through it like 70 or 80 miles an hour. It's like, dude, that's totally unsafe. Like, what if you smack into this like wall at that speed? And, you know, he was a civilian. He wasn't the Blue Devil, so he might not have survived that. And he doesn't even know if as a Blue Devil, he could even survive that kind of collision anyway. So I thought that was very strange and reckless for him. I know he's a stuntman, but, you know, I would assume that stuntmen, even though they like to walk on the wild side, they do have common sense when it comes to things like this. And I was shocked when Avery stabbed Sheriff Cable in the car. I didn't see that coming. The last we saw of her and her exchange with him, was, he went to see Matt, his son, and I can kind of understand her, like, did Avery even ever care about Avery? It's kind of hard to tell, whether he cares about you or not. And even so, it's like, because he's so, like, evil, does it even matter if he cares about you? Because, being associated with him is not good for you, as, we've seen throughout the evolution of the show. But, the sheriff was like, I'm never going to be with you. Stay away from our son. You don't care about him or you're a bad influence. And then, I wasn't thinking anything more than that. I was like, okay, the sheriff's getting in her car. What's she going to do next? And then Avery's in the back of the car and he runs her through. I was totally surprised. I didn't see that coming at all. I didn't think that that was how the next interaction between her and Avery would work out. But it did. And, he tried to kill her. I mean, you could say she tried to kill him a couple of episodes ago. So it's fair, but he had just got finished trying to get with her and telling her, I love you. And then it's like, I'm gonna kill your butt. So it was like, Avery, I mean, I get the fact that Avery's probably pissed off, but, he's a crazy, evil old man. And, as we've seen, being involved with Avery, especially being in a relationship with him, is hazardous to your health because, he'll take out anybody. I mean, look what happened to both of the women on the show who've been involved with him. He has one committed, unfairly, and the other one he straight up kills. So it's dangerous to be involved with him. Although, like, to be fair, both those ladies did try to kill him earlier. So I don't know. And screw him over too, like take over his company, Maria, anyway. So I guess you could say that neither of them were lovers who were, it's not like they were women who hadn't tried to kill him before. So maybe, he wouldn't have done this to them if they'd been like, quote unquote, nice ladies, I guess. But still, Avery's so nefarious, you could say he drives people to do horrible things that they wouldn't do otherwise if he were a different kind of man, a good man, so to speak. But yeah, he is truly, a supervillain, or at least a civilian supervillain. Not one with powers, but I guess kind of like, regular human kind of supervillain. Evil to the last. And as for Jason Woodrue, the person whom I think was supposed to be the actual, like, superpowered supervillain of the show before the studio, busted this show on the kneecaps, yeah, he went full on crazy this episode. Although I don't really see Jason. I have a bit more sympathy for Jason than I do other villains because I think as crazy as he is, I do think he does love his wife. He's just crazy, right? And deranged. Like, I don't think he was ever trying to hurt her, but still, it's like, as Abby tried to tell him, you need to have her in a hospital, not be doing this experimental stuff on her. But because he's crazy, that's not how it worked out. But yeah, the first thing he should have done, especially, as a professional doctor scientist, he should know better than like anyone else, is he should take his wife who just OD'd to the hospital. But, he's going crazy, so he decided to work on her himself. And I'm curious what the writers, I've said this multiple times, but I'm even more so, curious now what they had intended to do with his wife, because she's not dead. I thought that she would die, after her overdose, and that would drive him over the edge, but she's still alive. So I'm wondering what they would have planned to do with her character as the show evolved, because I don't really see her having much usefulness beyond, him turning into the Floronic Man. But, I mean, it's cool if they wanted to keep her on the show. I think the actress who plays her, Carolyn's her name, right? The character, she did a good job. Like, when she was at the table, like, being taped up and stuff, and she couldn't move, the actress did a good job with the face acting. She did a really great job. A lot of talent there. So, yeah, I mean, I think if they had wanted to keep her character around, she deserves it. I mean, the actress who played her was good enough, I think, to have a bigger role as the show went on. So that would have been cool. I wouldn't have had any problems with that. That character, actually, Jason's wife, grew on me more. I thought she would just be like some throwaway side character, but as the season has progressed, that character grown on me basically through that actress's performance for the most part. Like playing a lady with Alzheimer's and then, someone who was basically like catatonic, is that the right word for it? Or who was paralyzed and having to act with just her face. She did a great job. And we saw another appearance of Madame Xanadu in this episode. Madame Xanadu hasn't really had much to do on the show as much as I thought. Like, she's almost kind of just like a day player. Like, she pops up here and there, but her character is the one whom I think hasn't had as much to do on the show. But, she's sort of kind of been an ally of Maria. But in this episode, I don't know if she was much of a helpful ally because, Maria was falsely put into the sanitarium, right? Like, she's not really crazy. Avery just wanted to get rid of her. He set her up. And, I think it was also revenge for her trying to kill him. But, she wasn't really crazy. But then Madame Xanadu shows up in her room and, says, I'll give you something to give you peace. And, giving, like, Maria access to her daughter's dead spirit and having her be able to see her but no one else can, that seemed like it made her look like she was actually full-on crazy. So, like, now it's like she'll never get out of that sanitarium. Right? Because before, I think she would try to be like, I'm an innocent woman. I gotta prove my sanity to get out of here. But thanks to Madame Xanadu, now she's like really crazy. Or people are gonna think she's crazy. Like she's talking to... Like she can see Shauna's ghost, her daughter, but no one else can. So they'll see cameras of this lady talking to somebody who's not there. And who's crying and stuff at like an invisible person. So now they're gonna be like, this lady actually really is crazy. We're never gonna let her out of here. So I'm not sure if Madame Xanadu's help was actually really help. I'm not sure Madame Xanadu has ever truly helped Maria throughout this entire show, because she's the one earlier in the season who was like, yeah, I can help you like talk to Shauna's spirit, and then Shauna's spirit turned out to be evil, turned by Maria. Whereas if Madame Xanadu had never like helped her out with that, that never would have happened in the first place. Unless I'm remembering wrong, was the spirit showing up anyway? But whatever. I don't really know if Madame Xanadu's help, at least in Maria's case, is help at all. I think Maria should like maybe stop trying to talk to her or stop seeking her out. And the man who plays Ellery, as someone pointed out, I had noticed that too, but just forgot or didn't think to mention it. He also played Black Manta's father in Aquaman, and he uttered a line, or when he and the other men were in the swamp, and Swamp Thing was like attacking them, one of the guys utters a line, or he has an exchange with one of the like hunters or the military mercenaries, whatever they are. Like, we're not hunting him, he's hunting us, referring to Swamp Thing. And that is exactly similar to the line he said as that other character in Aquaman, as Black Manta's father, when they were on the submarine. And I think Aquaman like hit the ship to go into it or something. And Yahya Abdul-Mateen as Black Manta said, like, something hit us. And then this guy playing his father said, or he was like, did we hit something? And then this guy playing his father said, no, something hit us. And it was like the same kind of mirroring of the two lines in two different like DC properties. I'm wondering if the writers put that in Swamp Thing on purpose. And a lot of people in Aquaman, they dragged that line too, and they thought it was bad writing or whatever. I don't think it was bad writing. I thought it was average writing, but that's just me. But I thought that was an interesting, like, I guess, mirroring of, the similar line in two different movies that I think they probably did on purpose, but maybe they didn't. Maybe it was on purpose, because this is a James Wan produced show, and James Wan did Aquaman. So yeah, maybe that was on purpose. I wonder how many people caught that. If you watched this episode of Swamp Thing, did you get those similar lines uttered, by the same actor? And finally, the end of the show was an exchange between Alec and Abby, and it mirrored the beginning of the episode where it was Alec / Swamp Thing and Abby talking to each other. And, it was obvious that they care a lot about each other, similar to how Alec and Abby, Swamp Thing and Abby are, true loves in the comics. And, it did make me think, it hit home what kind of show Swamp Thing is. Swamp Thing is not a traditional, like, superhero show. It's more of like kind of a gothic or dark or supernatural romance. The core of it, I think, Abby's the main character, but the core of the show, or as it goes on, is her relationship with Swamp Thing, the two of them. So it's kind of like this supernatural, dark Beauty and the Beast romance with, an ensemble cast. Basically a gothic, supernatural, dark romance or dark drama is what Swamp Thing is, with action in it. And, at the core of it, or a big part of it, not the core necessarily, is, their feelings for each other. And I'm sure the show was just going to expand upon their connection in the final episodes and throughout successive seasons. But I did think it was appropriate that this episode and the entire series ends with Abby and Alec is seen with them together, since they are kind of the core protagonists of the show. It's fitting. And, their love story is, or it was going to be, a big part of the show. Their love story was kind of only just beginning to get started. And hadn't really blossomed, I think, yet. But they were totally building up to that, the writers were, but, it was fitting that, what we got between the two of them, as abbreviated and truncated as it was the end of this episode, because it fits. I mean, if you've read the Swamp Thing comics, Abby and Alec and their dynamic between each other is a big part of it. So it's only fitting that it's a big part of the finale of the show. We never really got to see Swamp Thing have a superpowered beatdown brawl between the Floronic Man, which is what a lot of us thought we were going to get because of the forced early ending. But for what it's worth, I think the writers did a lot with what they had to work with. And, this is an ending to Swamp Thing, the series and the episode. It is sad. I mean, watching this, you do get sad thinking about there was so much more they could have done. And this finale wasn't as good as it could have been. But like I said, I'm not blaming the writers because we all know what happened. It was just, the studio did what the studio did. And so as it is, we have a good ending of Swamp Thing, but not a great one. But again, I'm not blaming the production team at all because I think they did the best of what they had. And so if you ever want to get your fix of Swamp Thing, you just got to watch reruns now and hope, keep your fingers crossed for the Swamp Thing movie that they might do instead of, continuing on with the show as we've heard rumors about before. But, if you're watching this and you worked on the Swamp Thing TV show, you did a good job. And I'm glad I got to watch your storytelling and your product. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.